Thanks for tuning in to this month's Northwest Vision. I'm Karen Ruth, Superintendent of Schools in Northwest ISD. Northwest ISD creates rigorous and innovative curriculum each year for students. In addition to daily classroom activities, students have been preparing for STAAR, S-T-A-A-R, the State of Texas Assessment of Academic Readiness. STAAR replaces the Texas Assessment of Knowledge and Skills, our TAKS testing program, beginning this spring. Now with me today is Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, Edward Chevalier, and Executive Director of Curriculum and Staff Development, Dr. Rob Thornell. They're here to talk about end-of-course assessments, an important part of the STAAR system in Texas Assessment Program. So well, thank you both for being here with me today. And I'd like to begin by asking you, perhaps Mr. Chevalier, you would share with parents and our viewing audience exactly what end-of-course exams are and how they are now a part of a student's graduation requirements.
Dr. As you just mentioned, our students have been taking the TAKS test for the last 5 or 6 years, 7 years, and the TAKS test was a grade level test. So students that were in the 9th grade would all take a 9th grade TAKS test at the end of the year in specific subjects, same thing for 10th grade. An end-of-course test changes it up a little bit in that the end-of-course test will be given for the subject that a student's taking. For instance, in Algebra 1, students will take a test at the end of Algebra 1 to show that they've mastered the curriculum for Algebra 1, geometry, chemistry, things like that, instead of it being grade level specific. So as we make this transition, using the Algebra 1 test as the example, we'll have 8th graders, 9th graders, and 10th graders all taking the end-of-course test in Algebra 1 as that example.
And I can see the value of that. A student previously might be a 9th grader taking geometry.
Exactly.
And yet they would be taking a 9th grade TAKS test, which assessed primarily an Algebra 1 course.
And under the premise that the state has established for the testing, that's exactly the goal that they have stated. As we're making a transition into a new testing system, we'll see if that's an accurate goal, but the goal that they've stated is to determine whether or not students have mastered that curriculum that they're being tested on, as opposed to much more of a generic test that's a grade level specific test.
You know, the new STAAR system is a part of the state's accountability system. It's a way for our governing body, our legislature, and for our state administrative agencies, Texas Education Agency, to determine that the state of Texas, throughout the state, that students in all districts are having equal access, are achieving well in curriculum. So for that purpose, an accountability assessment or accountability test serves the state well to know are our children in the state of Texas doing well academically, regardless of the district they may be in, or the classroom they may be in, or the school itself that they might be in. How is that different? And I'm going to kind of move us along a little bit away from this EOC for just a moment. How is that different than assessment for learning that occurs throughout the year between a student, a teacher, and the course or class they might be in?
We are very proud of and very fortunate to have educators in our district that understand that assessment is a much more comprehensive thing than a single test on a single day. Assessment for learning for us, and there's a number of terms out there that are used. It may be formative assessment, it may be assessment for learning, it may be something else, but basically in a system that depends on assessment for learning for data, is that as a teacher determines where a student is, they would monitor and adjust their curriculum and their instructional activities to ensure that students that are struggling a little bit get additional help as identified in that assessment for learning, where students that truly understand and have shown that they've mastered it, the teacher has the opportunity to extend on that learning by providing additional activities. There's a role for both of those, but we're a little leery of a system that says how a student performs on one day of the year is the sole determiner or the major determiner of what that student has learned. We know that instruction and learning is much more than that, and we're very proud of the fact that our teachers have such a comprehensive understanding of that whole concept.
And well, thank you for saying that. We know that feedback is important, and as we as adults learn new things, as our students and our children learn new things, getting feedback on how they're doing, which parts they understand, and what else they might want to focus on is important for them. That's part of day-to-day instruction. What we're talking about today, the end of course exams, is part of the state's accountability system to determine whether or not school districts and schools in the state are delivering a quality of instruction that the state wants overall as a whole. What we do day to day in our classrooms assures parents and students that they have the feedback and the information they need through assessment to be good learners and to be good instructors and teachers. So perhaps, Dr. Thornell, you talk a little bit about how these new end-of-course exams are going to be, at this point, a consideration for part of a student's grades, if not this year, then the following year.
Okay. Well, first, I would like to add that there are many exciting things going on in the form of assessment throughout the district. Just like you guys mentioned, our teachers are preparing our students in a variety of ways, and it's been exciting to see that this spring. The end-of-course exams provide an opportunity and a challenge for all of us. In mathematics, they're going to start with Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. Algebra 1, as Mr. Chevalier mentioned, could be taken by an 8th grader, a 9th grader, possibly even a 10th grader. So it is a very difficult process. In English, it'll be English 1, 2, and 3. Science is biology, chemistry, and physics. And then social studies is world geography, world history, and U.S. history. So there are quite a few tests going on that students are going to be required to take over the course of their high school careers. Some of the considerations that we're looking at from the state include the idea originally proposed with these end-of-course exams would count 15% of their grades. Right now, we are still waiting on final determinations from the state as to exactly what that means and what the impact is on our students. But what we can say is, right now, as of today, 15% of this score on the test will be part of their grades. And so we're looking at different scenarios on what impact that will have on our kids as they move forward to graduation. There are also implications. The state is asking for minimum scores on these tests that could be very difficult for some of our students. For instance, if they have passed the class but yet do not receive a minimum score on their EOC, what does that look like and what will we do in the future? And those are things we are trying to discuss and determine as we move forward.
Yes, I understand that, that as legislated and as a part of the new STAAR program, the end-of-course exams will count as 15% of a student's grade. In question at the moment is whether that begins with this year's 9th graders in this transition year, since this is the first year any of the school systems in the state will administer end-of-course exams. Whether or not that means it begins now with this year's 9th graders, or whether it begins next year with 9th and 10th graders. There is value in giving the tests once as a state, evaluating what that means, what types of adjustments they may need to make in the testing or the accountability piece itself, and then making it an absolute part of that grade in the future. And we hope that we hear something about that soon, so that we'll be able to communicate that with to our students, teachers, and their parents.
I'd say I believe that Northwest has taken a lead around the state in trying to interpret what would be best for students and kids in making a decision on the EOC and the 15%. A lot of districts have looked at a variety of ways to interpret that law, and I think Northwest is out in front on trying to do what's best for kids and make it user-friendly for everyone.
Great, great. Now it also, end-of-course exams, beyond taking an impact or having an impact as 15% of the grade for that course each year, end-of-course exams also have a cumulative effect toward graduation. Would one of you like to share what that means to for our parents?
Well, there's a lot of news right now that this is a transition year, that a district might not get an accountability rating. But the other part of that news is it begins counting right now for two groups of students. One group is students who are taking Algebra 1 that are in the 8th grade right now, and the other group is students that are freshmen. And the score that you're referencing, that cumulative score, is at the end of a student's, at the end of 3 years of schooling, A student will have taken 3 tests in a particular content area. For instance, Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. The state will determine and provide the information for us of the cumulative score that a student has to achieve in those 3 tests in order to graduate. And that will be the case for mathematics areas, social studies areas, science areas, and English language arts areas. In addition to that cumulative score, each year that they take a test, the student has to make a minimum score in order for that score to count towards that cumulative. What I would say, it sounds real confusing right now, but what we are committed to doing is, as we receive that information from the state, we'll be providing information for our parents and our students so that they can also understand that system. We don't want any surprises this year. We don't want any surprises in 3 years when a student is looking back to see, do I have the scores on these tests that I'm going to need in order to graduate? So we'll be providing that information as it comes to us from the state.
Great. Well, I appreciate both of you sharing and giving some insight. And for those of you who are listening and watching, I would like to assure you that we are prepared for the changes in the new state accountability system. We know that this will be a change, and we do know that our students are capable and in fact today are meeting high rigor in their instruction and in the work that they're producing. We'll have the tools, our students will have the tools and resources needed right here in Northwest ISD to be successful. And if you're interested in learning more about the STAAR program, we invite you to visit the TEA Student Assessment website listed on your screen. And I want to thank you for listening, being with us today, and I want to thank both of you for joining us and having this conversation. It's a great opportunity to share with parents and with our students the changes in our state's accountability system. Thank you.